So the other day I was bored, and I do what I always do when I'm bored, open 18 different tabs of 17 different streaming services to find something to watch. I had YouTube, I had Dropout, I had Netflix, I have all these things open, ready, their homepages begging me to say, please watch something on my streaming service. And I kept looking at it going, nah. And I realized something. Nowadays, we don't get mid stuff anymore. Stuff that you could just put on in the background while I'm doing something else. Nowadays, content has to be great for it to exist on these platforms. So this video is in defense of the mid and why I think we need more mid content nowadays. Back in the day, it was easy. You would just pick a film, go to your local rental video store and get something to watch, bring it home and watch it. Nowadays, there are hundreds of different things to watch at any given time. And most of it is saying, I'm good. I'm really good. I deserve your attention. But you know what? Sometimes I want something that doesn't deserve my attention. Something that can just go, hey, you know what? If you want to go and do the washing or like cook or play a video game while I'm on in the background, that's cool with me, bro. Like we have a good relationship. So I want more of that kind of content. I don't need things to be either the greatest of all time or the worst thing ever made. Let's make more mid stuff. So what happened to the mid? What happened to the movies and TV shows and games that were pretty okay? Well, let's look at some of the big things that made something mid and look at why those things might have changed in the current age of content. So let's begin with the mid-budget. The mid-budget was something that existed for a very, very long time, but has recently died off primarily because of streaming. And when I say mid-budget, I'm talking in like the tens to ones millions here. This is still a lot of money for most people, but when you think of a mid-budget film in particular, that's a movie that cost between $10 and $50 million. Now, however, with movies making less and less money, this risk to put this kind of mid-budget into a film doesn't exist anymore. Distribution nowadays happens at the two extremes. You have massive budget blockbusters trying to make hundreds of millions of dollars, or you have indie low-budget horror films that are trying to make at least more money than what they are made for. Blumhouse, the production company, specializes in this. They make horror films for very, very cheap in the hope that one of them makes a lot of money and brings the production studio some more money. These movies don't have mid-budgets, they have low budgets. The comparison of something between like Talk to Me, the Australian horror film, and like Avengers Endgame are the only two sides of the spectrum nowadays. But why is that? What happened to this mid-budget? The mid-budget used to be a really great process because what would happen is if a movie doesn't make most of its money back in box office, DVDs and other home video platforms were able to make that up. The budget of the movie didn't need to make back everything that it made within its box office release in a hope that more people might rent the movie or buy the movie on DVD to watch after it was in cinemas. Your classic rom-coms, Oscar bait kind of movies existed in this space. Movies that probably wouldn't have huge box office returns but would have longevity, and people would want to watch over and over again or want to collect for the sake of quality. However, nobody buys DVDs anymore. Nobody buys any sort of video on demand. Ever since streaming has existed, it has completely cut off this revenue source for most of film. TV happens in the same way. A lot of what made a TV show money as it kept going, sitcoms relied on reruns. These were showings of the episodes that would happen years, sometimes decades after the TV show came out. But nobody watches free-to-air TV anymore. There is no syndication for those people to show reruns. Yes, every now and again you'll see an episode of Seinfeld or Frasier on TV, but those numbers are far less than they were back when people used to watch traditional television. Streaming removed both of these revenue sources for both the movie and TV industry. For a TV show and a movie to make money now, it needs to be funded directly by these streaming services. You look at The Fall Guy and Furiosa, two massive box office movies that have come out this last season and have immediately been pushed onto streaming only 2 weeks after their theatrical release because they're not making enough money. The studios practically went, well, no one's coming to see them in the cinemas. We might as well put it on streaming because at least some people might pay for it there, as opposed to coming all the way into a cinema. You don't see long syndications of TV shows anymore where there's tons of episodes because for the most part, these shows are making small, confined releases every 1 or 2 years for streaming services. People aren't tuning into a new show every week for years. They want to binge an entire season of a show annually. A movie's budget is no longer a sign of its quality. Furiosa and Fall Guy are both wonderful films, but just because they cost more than anything else doesn't necessarily make them better. You look at a movie like Shin Godzilla, which has just come out, which has what I would consider a mid-budget, about 8 million USD converted from Japanese yen, and this movie looks and is phenomenal. The budget of Shin Godzilla is far less than even the TV shows that are being made today, but the quality of it doesn't rely in its budget. It uses its budget well. Shin Godzilla is a great mid-budget film, and if you're looking for something like it, definitely watch it. But at the end of the day, Shin Godzilla is still a great movie. It is not a mid-film. It may be mid-budgeted, but it's not a mid-quality film. So why don't we shift now to the mid-quality? What happened to the content that came out that was okay? Back in the 2000s and 90s, we had this huge wave of independent filmmaking. These mid-budget type movies that were also of mid-quality. These fun rom-coms that we think of nowadays as fun movies that you can put on the background and watch, and satiated the need for that simple, easy film. You don't see movies like this being made nowadays. If something is going to fit into that spot of a rom-com nowadays, it needs to at least have some huge A-list stars and some massive set pieces. Think of this year's Anything But You and that Anne Hathaway movie that I don't know the name of. Both of these have huge star power and whose mid-budget is primarily going to support these people. It kind of elevates it above that typical mid-film. The quality of these movies is very much in this state. But these films also fell to the wayside nowadays because even though in the 2000s they might have been what people would consider mid, nowadays people aren't willing to watch them. Because of the oversaturation of content nowadays, the quality of everything we watch has exceeded exponentially. Why would we want to watch a movie of this quality when we have access to better films, better TV shows, better games, and also more stuff that has existed for all of the years before? The fact that you could watch anything of a similar or better quality on any of the streaming services kind of minimizes the impact of a new movie like this, because why would you watch the new version of something you've already seen when you can watch a better version of it that came out 10, 15 years ago? For something to exist in that mid quality now, it actually has to be better than mid. When I sit back and I want to put something on in the background, at the end of the day, I still want it to be pretty good, and that's a problem, right? As much as I spoke before about wanting a mid-quality film, the standard of content nowadays is so high that it pushes the things that would be mid down into a worse tier. You think of movies like Madam Web and Morbius, which if they came out as superhero films in like the 80s and 90s, probably wouldn't have been considered to be that bad. These movies are not great, weirdly paced, have interesting effects, but would definitely fit in with that context of what people expected of a superhero movie. But now, because of what happened with the MCU, people expect such high quality from these films that when Morbius and Madam Web come out, they're not mid, they're bad movies. I can't watch those films and go, yeah, that's good, because at the end of the day, I don't think I enjoyed watching either of them. And there's nothing to do with the movies themselves or the people who made it, but just the cultural perception of what those movies are nowadays has been spoiled. The idea of what mid is anymore has changed. Which leads then into this other idea of internet criticism and the way in which this widespread internet has made things exist in one of two camps. It can't be mid anymore. It's either the greatest of all time or complete and utter trash. Now, this is one of my least favorite things about criticism nowadays. The fact that anything that comes out that's new has to exist in one of these two camps, and it's very derivative and not very useful in terms of actual criticism. There's a lot more nuance in the quality of what we watch, but nowadays something's either worth watching or not watching at all. And because there are so many things to watch, that filtration system is very important. Why would you want to watch something that isn't worth watching when you have access to so many things that are? But because of this and everyone's content increased, now you have this gap in the middle where people are either making stuff that's wonderful or stuff that is just being thrown to the wayside. There is no middle ground anymore in terms of the quality of the stuff that we make. And because everything is competing with each other, there have been blurring of the lines as to what makes good content. Which then leads us into the next point, the mid-length. Now, I love a 90-minute film. It's one of my favorite things of all time. Seeing the fact that a movie is only an hour and a half makes me go, great, this is low commitment. I don't need to sit here for ages. If it's bad, whatever, it'll be done in an hour and a half. Nowadays, though, most films that are releasing that are demanding people's attention are longer than this. You look at Dune, which is like 2.5 hours. Oppenheimer's 3.5 hours. So many of these movies nowadays that are considered high quality are also very long. They are demanding our attention. They can keep us in the cinema for longer. They can charge a higher price for it. That last Stranger Things episode that came out years ago was as long as a movie was, but it was technically an episode of TV. The definitions and restrictions as to what differentiates a movie from a TV show episode nowadays are blurred really weirdly, and that also their budgeting is the same. They typically now look the same. They're usually of the same length. There is no mid-budget, mid-length thing anymore. I think that's one of the reasons why everyone loved Baby Reindeer. Baby Reindeer's pacing was good because it was basically 6 or 7 25-minute episodes. The length of each episode actually works really well for its format. If you were to binge the whole show, it would be like watching a pretty long movie. I think it's maybe 4 hours in total, which is longer than a typical film, and you're not going to sit in the cinema for that long. But the commitment of time is less than watching a 10-hour TV show. Baby Reindeer exists in the middle of these two worlds, the long film and the long TV show, and is a middle-length TV show, which we haven't gotten in such a long time, and allowed so many people to watch it. Sitting down to watch a 10-episode season that comes out all at once is a 10-hour commitment. Watching Baby Reindeer is a weekend. That is the benefit of the mid-length. Both TV episodes were usually restricted because of syndication, and the length of films were demanded by people's attention span. But now both of those things have shifted. There is no syndication as to how long a TV episode needs to be anymore because streaming doesn't work within that schedule, and theaters aren't making enough money as it is. They don't need to show a bunch of movies in one day with a shorter runtime. This does make for higher quality entertainment, but it does leave that gap for the mid. The movies and TV shows that were short, easy to watch, put on in the background. Sitcoms as a genre has completely shifted because the idea of watching 20-minute episodes no longer appeals to most people. People watch The Office and Brooklyn Nine-Nine by just putting it on and just watching it in total, binging it episode after episode as they kind of blur together. You don't tune in to watch a new episode of a sitcom anymore. People used to sit by the TV and watch I Love Lucy. That wouldn't happen today. The quality of content nowadays is the best it has ever been in the history of the world. There are so many things to watch, read, listen to, play of such high quality because there is so much of it so readily available. But sometimes we don't want something great. We don't need the best movie of all time. We don't want to read a book that's going to change our lives. We don't need to listen to a song that we'll listen to on repeat forever. Sometimes all I need is something pretty mid. Thanks for watching this pretty mid video. I've been thinking about this a lot recently because a lot of people have been branding The Acolyte as mid, which I didn't talk about at all during this video because I wanted to wait until the show was fully out before giving my thoughts on it, and boy, are there a lot of thoughts on it. So if you want to see my thoughts on The Acolyte, subscribe, hit the notification bell to be notified when that video will come out after the entire season comes out, because I don't want to talk about the show before it's ended, because I feel like that would be weird to do. So if you want to hear more about that and how The Acolyte may or may not be mid or fit into these categories, please subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.